Yo, what is up guys, Jack Gardiner here, and today we're going to be talking all about hybrid picking in these kind of 10 levels. Now, if you want 2 extra levels and all the tabs for this, then make sure you check out musicbro.co.uk. This is part of this month's monthly lesson. I'll leave links down below, and of course, if you are interested in any of my other lessons, then check out my website. That will also be in the links down below. But let's cut to the point then. So, hybrid picking. Why is it useful and why do I use this technique? Well, this is a technique that I've been using for years now, and I like to split it into a couple of different categories in which I like to utilize it. So I will think of it in terms of single line playing. Now, what's really cool about this is it enables us to do very specific things like string skipping, or where notes are on adjacent strings, it eliminates the need for, say, economy picking. So lines like this. That is much easier than going, and it's a lot harder to get clean. Now, the other thing I should point out is that hybrid picking, because we are using the fingers, it gives us a different tone as well. Most people will probably argue that the finger tone is the nicest tone when you get this. As opposed to... They're just different kind of timbres, if you like, but essentially hybrid picking is giving us that softer sound. There's less of a transient on the attack like there is with a pick. Now, the other way in which I like to utilize hybrid picking is in terms of my chordal playing. So what hybrid picking enables is this idea that we can play chords basically where every note is landing at the same time. To give an example, if I was to do that with the pick, basically those notes can never be exactly at the same time or as close as humanly possible to that, like say on a keyboard, which is really, really cool. Now, in terms of the technique itself, I will utilize all 3 of these fingers if I am using, say, like a chordal idea like that. But when I'm playing single lines, it tends to be just the pick and the middle finger and the 3rd finger. They really help with like legato ideas. These kind of things. Or string skipped arpeggios. The pinky just doesn't get utilized as much in that, but of course you might find that it works. Now, in terms of where I am picking on those fingers, I always like to think of the pad of the fingertip, really. And you can think of it in 2 ways. Either you brush with that, like Tom Quayle would, for example, when he's playing a legato thing, where you want every single note to have the same kind of dynamics. There's no note that pops out. Or you can go underneath the string or use your nail on that finger. This is more closely associated with like chicken picking, which is just another word for hybrid picking. But I guess that gets associated with country music a little bit more. So those. It's just a different tone. Now, bear in mind, if you're wanting smoothness, then that snap is probably not going to work. So for legato-based ideas, definitely think of the brush technique. If you want a bit more dynamic range in those lines and you want something to snap out, then think about coming underneath the string. Just bear in mind, when you come underneath the string, it's a little bit less of economy of motion. So to play things fast becomes a little bit harder. So anyway, with these next 10 levels then, we are going to look at these in those 2 different categories. We're going to start right from scratch and we're going to work up all the way to kind of a pro level of how you can use this. And they will be based around single line ideas and of course, chordal based ideas. without further ado, let's check out level 1 then. So the idea then with this lick is super basic and easy. All I am doing is I'm thinking of A minor pentatonic position 1. But what I'm doing is I am essentially using the middle finger to start off this line. I'm going to be on that 5th fret of the G string, the minor 3rd. And I'm going to pluck that with my middle finger. And then I'm going to pick with the pick the 7th fret on the D string. It's pull off and then hammer on again, and then we let that kind of roll, so you get this. Now you want to be really careful of your muting here, you don't want this. This kind of sound where all those other strings are ringing out. We essentially want it so that we are blocking off that E, A, and D string unless it's played with the right hand, with the palm, and then my left hand is actually muting the 2 top strings. If you look here, that's the left hand. Now we want every single note to feel like it's being played for the same length of time and that the time feel is good. So when you're doing this with a metronome or a backing track, try and record yourself and see if every single note is lasting as long as it should do there. When you get faster, it can actually sound pretty cool. You could move that around the scale. And you get this kind of idea. Let's move on then to level 2. So this line, we're just adding in 1 note. Again, it's from this pentatonic scale. This time we are using the 7th fret on the G string. We're getting that 11th or the perfect 4th interval. Now essentially it's very similar, except you're getting this. Now it's up to you what you want to do in terms of the fingerings. I like to roll, so I basically come across. But some people might find that really weird, so you could use the pinky. It's totally up to you, but essentially that at a higher speed can sound really cool. Again, take it through the scale. Starting to get kind of Richie Kotzen-esque ideas. This kind of sound. So just bear in mind that all the notes are the exact same length. And if you want to give yourself like an extra parameter, try and see if you can do the brush technique or if you do the snap. So that would be the snap, the brush, this kind of idea. Let's move on to level 3. Higher speed. So this one is incorporating more string crosses. Now, I must point out at this point that there is a key element behind this technique that can help you, and this is the idea of planting. Now, essentially, planting is where we leave the finger ready on the string which is about to be plucked. So in this case, the middle finger. You can do this with all 3. So as I pluck that and I come to the D string here, my middle finger is resting on that G string, ready to pluck anyway. It's all part of economy and motion in order for us to get faster with this technique and to have less of a kind of hindrance there, really. For every single one of these string changes, my middle finger is waiting on that string before it needs to actually pluck. It's resting there. Now, if you think of this kind of exercise, if you were to pick this would be a nightmare. Can you hear all of those strings ringing out? I mean, I am not the best alternate picker anyway, but essentially this kind of gets rid of that because we're able to use this middle finger. It just makes life much easier. Now, of course, if you wanted to expand on that, you take it through different positions. This kind of idea, and you can take that wherever you want. But essentially, that's the kind of fundamental for playing these kind of single line ideas. So I'd try all three of these levels until you're at a comfortable speed, and then we should move on to level 4, where we're going to start incorporating some chordal playing. So in level 4, we're going to start looking at it in terms of its chordal applications and how we can use hybrid picking to essentially play multiple notes at the same time. This is going to start off really basic and then we'll get a little bit more complex as it goes on. But let's hear an example then. So this kind of sound. So there, what's going on is I am just playing triads. I'm literally thinking in the key of C or A minor, I'm playing 6, 5, 4, and back to 5 again before returning to 6. Now this, what I'm doing is playing an A minor triad, and I'm taking just 3 notes at a time here. So my pick will play the D string, or the root note of the chord in this case, and my middle finger and third finger will pluck the G and the B string, or the other notes of the triad, so the 3rd and the 5th. And essentially I get this, and then here, there's a little bit of syncopation when I do that. I separate the root note from those 2 triads, and that's what's cool about hybrid picking. So we can get this. This kind of sound at faster speeds. This is the kind of idea, essentially. So once you've got that down, I would say apply it to a lot of different chord structures using those triads and see if you can pick out those notes. Of course, what you could do as a kind of bonus idea is add 1 more note so that we get a 4 note, kind of, even though it's a triad, we're just doubling one of these notes, which happens to be the octave in this case here. And that will include the use of the pinky. Anyway, let's move on then to level 5. So here what's going on is we are starting to arpeggiate chords, another great example of how hybrid picking can work in your playing. So all I am doing here is I'm taking those same shapes that we had in level 4 and I'm arpeggiating them with this pattern. So I'm going pick, middle, and then I. So that 3rd finger there on the right hand. So it's like pick, middle, I, pick, middle, I, pick, middle, and then we move down. And then to this G, then the F, G, A minor, up to that G in that first inversion, F in first inversion, and that's essentially it. Apply these to any chord structures you want. I just use it as a kind of arpeggiated idea, really. Now, what I would say there, if you're struggling with those triads when I'm talking about first inversion, check out, I have a whole free lesson on YouTube here about triads. And if you want to get more into that kind of stuff, then check out my fretboard visualization and navigation course over at my website. But anyway, I think we should move on then to level 6. Okay, so some of you might recognize that track as No Scrubs by TLC. Shout out to that tune. I used to play it all the time back in Liverpool with a few different singers. But essentially, when I was trying to find a way to apply this to guitar, I was finding it quite difficult because essentially the original track, I think, is like a synth that's playing on an acoustic guitar patch, like a lot of that kind of, 90s R&B, early 2000s, even some of the neo-soul stuff. It was played on keyboard, so some of the shapes are an absolute pain to play. If you were to do that, it works, but it's a different tone. Like if I was to play it with the fingers, which I'm doing here, then we can use the middle, third finger and the pinky to essentially pick those. So what this example is doing is it's given you an idea of how you can start incorporating lines in the middle. Think of some of the newer generation of guitar bands like Polyphia, Chon, those kind of guys, where they're playing melodies inside of these chord movements. This is a perfect starting point for this kind of technique. So that's a tricky one. I'm just thinking of this as we've got D minor, we've got A minor, E7, and it goes back to A minor. And the fill is just like an Aeolian scale, really. A Aeolian, I'm thinking. And then this is part of that as well. Just bear in mind that we should be always arpeggiating with the middle, third, and pinky there. So got a really cool feel to it, and of course apply it to other chord structures to further utilize this arpeggio technique using hybrid picking. Let's move on then to the next level. So this one is super cool in the sense that we're adding some syncopation and we're doubling up some of the notes with the pick here. Now, some of you might recognize that as the Stairway to Heaven kind of line. Now, essentially, I'm trying to play it in more of that kind of Brazilian type feel. And you can see maybe where Jimmy Page got this kind of idea from then with that chordal movement, where essentially it's walking down chromatically with that lowest note. You can think of it as like an A minor, melodic minor thing, minor 6 if you want. But essentially, we've got this. And then the first idea is just me trying to syncopate there. So always the higher notes are plucked with the middle finger and the ring finger there. Now on that double note, it's up to you whether you want to go up, down with the pick, but essentially it's introducing a new element to this. Now the second half of this exercise or level is essentially where we start arpeggiating it, but we keep that movement going. So there I'm plucking with the pick and then the third finger is plucking the higher string. Then I use the pick to pick the G string, but then it's going to be the middle on the right hand and then the third on the right hand, that ring finger. And then here, like this. So we've got a bit of syncopation going on. It's a lot harder than you think to keep that going. Another way in which you can utilize this hybrid picking. Let's move on then to level 8. So this is an idea based off of a Villa-Lobos track, Etude No. 1. It's a classical guitar piece from years and years ago. And I think it was Rick Graham, actually, that I watched do this years ago. And the pattern itself adapts super well as a kind of hybrid picking exercise. So a big shout out to Rick Graham for showing me that years ago. Essentially, what you are doing is you are using the string skips so that we can basically pluck with the middle finger rather than using a pick. Now in the original it will have been a completely different finger, and I believe it's like this kind of idea where you go thumb, first finger, and then we're utilizing 2 and 3 at the top. But I think this is really cool for hybrid picking. So what we would do is we would go pick, hybrid, pick, hybrid, pick, hybrid, pick, hybrid, and then pick, hybrid, pick, hybrid, pick, hybrid, pick, hybrid. So you've got like this. You can use it to any chord that has like 6 notes in it, so the big bar chords are usually the best there. But then I picked like this B flat kind of Lydian sound. And back to the A minor. You do it anywhere. This kind of idea, but essentially it's getting you used to this idea of rapid string changes using hybrid picking. So I think that's enough of the chordal based ideas, or the kind of arpeggio based ideas within chords. What we should do for the next 2 levels then is check out how we can apply this to single line playing in a more modern way that you'd hear in the likes of the fusion stuff or the prog stuff, you know, anything that's super modern. Let's check it out. So in this level then, we are back to our single line style playing. And what I'm really thinking of here is kind of like an A minor arpeggio, but adding in this kind of flat 6. So really I'm thinking of a string skipped idea. You could think of it as maybe F major 7 as well if you'd like. And then on the second one, I am thinking of kind of like a C major 7, and I'm adding in that 6 or 13th in there. This kind of sound. Now really the big thing here is that this would be a nightmare to pick. Using the hybrid picking, it kind of saves us. And you can break it into 2 parts. So the first half, and then the second half, and then maybe even the third part there. So you've got C. You could do this with a ton of arpeggios. I've just used these 2 as the example. But essentially this is something that will be really difficult with just the pick because of that string skip, essentially. So at full speed. I'm struggling with it a little bit there, but essentially that would be the idea. So that is a real modern way of being able to use these string skip arpeggios, but utilizing hybrid picking. Let's check out then example number 10, or level number 10. Okay, so this last one is really tricky. Now, essentially what I'm thinking here is kind of like an A minor 11, if you like, arpeggio. We've got the 9th and 11th in there, and it's kind of spelling out this chord. And then a C major 9 kind of arpeggio or sound. There. So this one. I accidentally plucked the high E, but that was the same note actually, just an octave lower. So I put this in kind of like 5, but you could force it over a 4 feel. This is something that happens a lot in the kind of modern prog stuff. But essentially, just be careful as you're rising through. So what I'm doing there is like pick, hammer, pick, then I'm using the middle finger on that G string, pick, and then the middle finger on the high E. So you can think of it almost like a 2-1-2 idea. And then as I'm descending, Basically, I'll go up, up with the pick and then pick the string skip with the middle finger. So. And then on the C, the same idea. It's the exact same pattern with the right hand. Just works really, really well, and it's super fun to play, especially if it's a sequence that with multiple different chords, then you've got a prog track essentially. So I hope you've enjoyed these 10 levels. If you are on Music Bro, then don't forget to check out the other 2 levels. If you're not, then check out the links down below, and there will be 2 further examples using these kind of single line ideas in a real modern context. So it's pushing the kind of boundaries of the technique. We're getting into some crazy territory, really. I hope you guys have enjoyed that. What do you think? Do you like using hybrid picking in your own playing? Did you find this video useful? Please let me know down below in the comments. I always appreciate getting your guys' feedback. Like I say, if you are interested in more in-depth lessons, then check out my website. That'll be down below. And if you want to, you can join as a member on Music Bro, where we've got tons of production courses as well as guitar courses, including all the tabs for this lesson here. So my name is Jack Gardiner. Thanks again, guys. Till next time. Cheers.